My name is Pastor Quint. I'm the executive pastor here. We're going to wrap up our series on radical generosity today. This is week 3. So if you've been following along these last couple of weeks, you know that we looked at what God has to say about the tithe in week 1. All right, we discussed the heart posture of trusting God, trusting what God has to say about living on 90% and giving 10% back to Him through the church. All right. And to be honest with you, there's already been some great testimonies in this room on people who heard that message, applied it, and God showed up in their life. Okay, so let me explain to you what that means. Literally 14 days ago, Pastor Nicole stood right here and preached on the tithe, and people did what she said, and there has been awesome testimonies coming from that. Can we just thank God for that this morning? And then last week, we talked about the importance of a plan, a vision, and a dream. Okay, once we submit to this life of trusting God with our finances, then we really need to trust His guidance. And we find in His word that He does not stop at the tithe, all right? He challenges us to be a generous people, giving above and beyond just that 10%. I shared a thing online this week that said, generosity is what shows we serve a different king and we belong to a different kingdom. All right, and so He challenges us to do that. So we need to be positioning ourselves to be a generous people. That starts with a plan that gets us into the generosity game, but then we need to have a vision for what we would do if we could do it. We need to write that vision down. We need to pray over it. We need to be invested in it so when the resources show up to make it happen, we recognize them for what they are, all right? The resources that will show up are just a means to the end, a means to the goal of our vision. And then lastly, we need to have a big dream, all right? And a big dream is something that really helps us zoom out, see the bigger picture. It will require us to stack a whole lot of days and weeks and months and even years, okay? But through that faithfulness, okay, God will show up. He will give us opportunities to realize our big dream. I shared one of my big dreams with you. I shared another pastor's big dream with you. But at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. It is vital that we have big dreams so that when God shows up and helps us accomplish them, we recognize it, okay? Otherwise, what could have happened never will happen because we never had the dream. So hopefully this week, you spent some time thinking about your big dream. So today, it's like, how do we even wrap this up? Where do you go from get a big dream? Like shoot for the moon, land among the stars. These were some thoughts that I had, all right? They did not make it out of the workshop, okay? But in preparation and prayer for this message, I felt like God actually led me to this question for our wrap up today, okay? It is this: what is the most generous thing that we can do? What is the most generous thing that each and every one of us can do? All right, so let's pray, and I'll show you what He revealed to me this past week. Jesus, we thank You that we live in a time and in a place where we can have conversations like this, where we can learn about generosity, where we can find out what Your word says about what we should do with our money, and then we can do it, and God, You're so faithful. You show up, and You provide for us like You promised that You would. So I ask, Lord, today that these words would not be my words, but they would be Yours, that we would learn what You would have for us, and that we would walk out of here today purposing to do the most generous thing that we can do. Amen. All right, let me read to you 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 21 from the Message translation to get us started this morning. It says, "Tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasury that will last, gaining life that is truly life. And oh, my dear Timothy, guard the treasure that you were given. Guard it with your life. Avoid the talk show religion and the practice confusion of the so-called experts. People caught up in a lot of talk can miss the whole point of faith. Overwhelming grace keep you." All right, let me give you some stats to get this conversation started this morning, all right? These are going to blow your mind. Almost half of the world's population, roughly 3.4 billion people, live on less than $5.50 a day. Roughly 2 billion people on this planet right now do not have access to clean drinking water. something we get from a tap or a bottle at will. And an estimated 264 million children do not go to school, and roughly 760 million adults are illiterate. Meanwhile, here in the U.S., we have public education, we have libraries filled with free information, and almost every one of you has the internet in your pocket right now, ready to search my stats and fact check me, all right? But listen, the question on the table is this: what is the most generous thing that I can do? And the answer to me is a pretty clear directive. The most generous thing that you and I could do with our lives, not with this sermon series, not with the last week's message to go get a plan, not with anything isolated, not with any small thing, but with our approach to this thing called life. The most generous thing you can do with your whole life is this: get your house and your finances in order. Boom. All right? Listen, I know. I didn't say it's the most Christian thing you can do. I didn't say it's the most American thing you do. I didn't say it's the most fiscally responsible thing you can do. Maybe it's all those things, maybe it's not. But I do believe it's the most generous thing you can do, is to get your house and your finances in order. Now let me explain. If you live in the United States of America and have a household income of over $34,000, you are in the top 1% of income earners on this planet. Do I need to say that again? If you live in the United States of America and have a household income of over $34,000, you are in the top 1% of income earners on this planet. Now, I know the 1% is a real fun topic of conversation for politics and government and everything else in the country that we live in, and that's fine. But how does it change for you once you're included? Because listen, if you're on this planet and you make more than $17 an hour and you work full-time hours, you're included, all right? And if we just go back to what Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 1, he said, tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves. Or the NIV says to not put their hope in this wealth. Listen, we all have a responsibility, but better than that, I'd like to say it this way: we have an ability to respond to what is being laid out here before us, all right? To get our house, our affairs, and our finances in order and under control. A long time ago, I read a book that stated that the difference between nouns and verbs is as simple as something being dead or alive. This is not English class, and I am not an English teacher, so let me just make this quick. But let me put it to you this way. If I say you have a responsibility to get your house in order, that's a noun, right? That seems kind of like ominous or soul-crushing, or like life's full of enough responsibilities, Pastor Quint. Could you not give me another one? But if we as Christians recognize that God has given us an ability to respond to Him in gratitude and put our faith and trust in Him, well, that's different, right? Like your heart of stone just became a heart of flesh, right? You got to do something with that, okay? So we are now energized to respond as an act of worship, and we are grateful that we have been given the ability to do so. Do you understand this morning? That seems reluctant at best. Let me keep going. All right, listen, please hear me. I'm not saying inflation isn't real. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying grocery prices are fair or simple or appropriate. I get it. I got 5 kids, and they all eat lots of food all day, every day, all right? I'm in it with you, okay? But what I am saying is that to be the light in this world that we are called to be, it is our great honor and our privilege as Christians to do what God says to do with money and watch Him open doors and give us opportunities to go be a blessing. I mean, what is it that's printed on our money anyways? In God we trust, all right? As Christians, if we are going to put those words into practice, then we must purpose in our hearts to get our finances and our household in order, all right? Listen, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It will take sacrifice, but it is an act of worship to do it. It is an act of faith and trust and belief that God will do what He says He will do, just like we talked about the testimonies we already have from week 1 of this series, all right? It is an act of worship to embrace the hard moments that this might bring, so that we can know God more, so that we can trust in him more, and so we can see him do more than we ever would have imagined on our own. All right? I want to go back to that top 1% thing. Listen, we all have no problem saying how the top 1% should or shouldn't behave with their money. I mean, not pro athletes. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they can do whatever they want with their money. We're not going to pick on them. But Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, we got opinions about their money. I'm going to leave that alone. But anyways, are we willing to be honest about our wealth? Remember, if you're in this country and you're making more than $17 an hour, more than $34,000 a year, you are, by God's grace, in a better position than 99% of the human beings on this planet. Is that not a sobering reality to consider? And frankly, we need to do something with that information. Listen, before this starts to feel like nothing but a guilt trip, I want to remind you of our question this morning. What is the most generous thing that I can do? This is not about how responsible you are or are not being. This is not guilt, this is not judgment. But what it is about recognizing that God has trusted you with an opportunity, okay? Do you hear me right now? God trusts you. He puts you here right now. He sees you, and he literally is saying, she can do this. He will do this. We are in this incredible position to show our Father how grateful we are and that we are going to do something about it. Our money is quite literally an avenue for worship as much as any song or any hymn or any melody, all right? I read a bunch of stats to you earlier. Let me give you some more to keep this conversation going. Buckle up for these ones, all right? 80% of all the money held by Christians on this planet is held by Christians in the United States. You should all collectively groan, okay? 80% of all the money held by Christians on this planet is held by Christians in the United States. Why should we groan? I mean, do you hear what that means? Do you grasp how incredible that is, that responsibility, that ability to respond that has been placed on us, okay? Listen, what an incredible opportunity. I mean, I feel inadequate to be entrusted in that, but for some reason, God believes in me to do what's right and to do what he's led and called us to do with that, all right? Now, here's the problem. It is estimated and feared that Christians in Europe and America spend nearly 98% of their total income on themselves. Thank you. Whoever said ouch, thank you. All right. It is also estimated that Americans, not just Christian Americans, but Americans in general, spend 22% of their income on non-essential items, also defined as treating themselves. Okay, 22% of their income on treating themselves. If that one sounds crazy, though, I found another stat to prove it to you. Americans spent somewhere around $18 billion on specialty coffees last year. And listen, there you are. All right, we're awake. All right, there we go. The coffee kicked in. All right, listen, I'm with you. I'm guilty. I drink 3 strong cups of coffee a day, all right? But listen, we need to do something about it. What are we going to do about all these stats and all this information and everything, all right? What is the most generous thing that we can do? Well, let me give you a simple example. I can drink 3 coffees a day, but I better figure out how to brew it myself, okay? If I'm going through the drive-through, $4 a pop 3 times a day, that's a me problem, all right? I got to fix that, okay? But I feel like I might be losing you with all these stats. So let me break it up a little bit. Can I tell you a story? All right, there we go. There's Josiah. All right, I gave you a shout-out earlier. Yeah, I bet you did. I bet you did have to catch your breath. All right, a couple of weeks ago, my family went down to Virginia to spend a week with our very best friends. They have 4 kids. We have 5, plus 4 adults. That's 13 people. It's a full house when we get together. We make it count. We have this saying, every meal matters, okay? Every meal matters. And we make this joint note ahead of the get-together, and we put in, like, who's going to make what and make a grocery list, and it's crazy, all right? But anyways, we're making food for 13 people, and for the most part, our kids are all here for it. Like, we're raising foodies over here, okay? We don't have picky eaters. It's an expensive way to do life. But let me just show you some photographic evidence of the types of food that we make, okay? So first, let's see what we got to get started. This was homemade pizza night, made by yours truly. That was me and my friend Azam. I'm making Quint's Bommin' Ramen and then homemade egg rolls. I mean, what can go wrong? Let's see, what do we got there? That was Greek night. That was burger night. There's the ramen. I mean, come on. That's breakfast sandwiches, every day breakfast sandwiches. Curry. I mean, we diversify here. We're all over the globe with our meal choices. This was Mexican fiesta night. Another breakfast sandwich. This was pulled pork sliders and the best mac and cheese you've ever had night, okay? All right, so I think you get the point. We know what we're doing with food, all right? We went full send for a solid week. That has nothing to do with the fact that we also had to fix some stuff with his septic that week. That was broken before we showed up, all right? But anyways, all right. So that's just to prove to you we know what we're doing with food. Probably a month ago, I told Jonathan, our new worship leader, hey, you guys should come on over for dinner sometime. We'd love to get to know you guys more, et cetera, et cetera. So I go home, and I say to Aaron, hey, we should have the Dutchers over. It'd be good to get to know them, blah, blah, blah. And our oldest son, who just turned 11 on Friday, and thinks he's invited into every conversation like every oldest preteen son does, says, I don't know, what should we make them? We have so much to offer. And Aaron and I looked at him and we're like, oh, do we? What do you bring to the table for this menu building exercise? And he blushed and got quiet and, all the things. But I was struck by his confidence in that moment, all right? And it immediately resonated, and I knew it would be a future sermon illustration. Because listen, what can he contribute, right? I mean, he's 11. Like, he can eat it. He can enjoy it. When I tell him to, he can clean up afterwards. Sometimes we might involve him in meal prep or vegetable cutting or whatever else, but we got a standard over here. We got something we're doing. Like, I'm not just letting my 11-year-old mess up my food stuff, right? All right, so here's the parallel. You might hear all these stats and all these numbers and all these percentages and not really know what to do with it. You also might attend Erie First and gladly share on social media or with your friends all the positive missions work that we're doing and all the positive momentum and things like that. And I think that's great. And I think we should be proclaiming all that God is doing through Kingdom Builders, not out of pride, but out of gratitude, out of the idea of helping it grow, all those things. But listen, here's my question. Are you making sure you're doing your part? All right? It's okay to say, we have so much to offer, like my 11-year-old, or my church is doing so much kingdom work for the sake of this example. But my question is, are you getting your house in order, and are you making sure you're participating in whatever way that you can? All right? Let me just hit the 2025 Kingdom Builders numbers real quick to kind of bring it all home here, all right? Here's some tangible proof that your participation can and will make a difference. We are shooting for our largest Kingdom Builders goal yet of $150,000. The math means that we have to raise $12,500 per month on average to hit that goal. We are currently, almost 3 months into the year, at $27,000. So we're in a good spot. We're maybe a little bit behind that 12.5 pace, but we're in a good spot. But now listen to these stats. Last year, 44% of our givers contributed to Kingdom Builders. That means out of everybody that gave to Erie First, 44% also gave to Kingdom Builders. In 2023, only 29% of those who gave to Erie First also gave to Kingdom Builders. So we definitely made some improvement going from 29% to 44%, all right? But currently this year, 33% of people who are giving to Erie First are also giving to Kingdom Builders. So my question to you, this is just to show the point. Do you see how quickly we would catch up to our pace and blow $150,000 out of the water if from this series the takeaway was everybody getting their finances in order and finding a way to participate? Okay? Listen, if you're not already in the game, do you see how quickly your participation could make a difference? We are teetering on the edge of our goal with 33% of people participating. If 100% of the people in this room did something, we would blow $150,000 out of the water, all right? And listen, I could drill down even more. We could talk about the percentage of people who call Erie First home and are giving it all. We could do that. I did not do all those numbers. But I think you get the idea. And hopefully I'm showing you this isn't about money. This is about our act of worship through our finances to get our house and our finances in order so that we can participate in what God is doing, so that we can say we have so much to offer and we are at least doing what our part is, okay? That is why I believe that the most generous thing that we can do, going back to 1 Timothy 6, to remind you, it says there, tell those rich in this world's wealth. Church, that is you and that is me. We are the top 1% on this planet. We are rich in this world's wealth. And it says, do not be obsessed with money. We live in a country and a society that affords most of us opportunities to earn enough income to talk about things like savings and healthcare and the desired modes of transportation, all those things. And it's so normal to us. We don't see it for the abundance that it is. We take it for granted, all right? But God placed you here and he placed me here in this time for a reason. And as Paul wrote in this chapter, the reason is not to be obsessed with money. It is to go after God and the riches that he piles on our lives. We talked about the spirit of mammon during the first couple of weeks. If you remember either of those weeks, the thing we talked about is that we do not want to get so bogged down by that spirit that says, just consume for you, secure things for you, take care of you, and never look outside of ourselves. And so I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you to consider, what are you doing with your ability to respond? Are you getting your finances in order? Are you doing what you can to play your part to contribute to the kingdom because of your gratitude, your trust, and your faith? Let's wrap up with this story today. I know it's been a lot over the last couple of weeks, but let me just read this to you from Matthew 20, verses 1 through 16. God's kingdom is like an estate manager who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. They agreed on a wage of $1 a day, and they went to work. Later, around 9 o'clock, the manager saw some other men hanging around the town unemployed. He told them to go to work in his vineyard, and he would pay them a fair wage, and so they went. He did the same thing at noon, and again at 3 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, he went back and found still others standing around. He said, "Why are you standing around all day doing nothing?" They said, "Because no one hired us." He told them to go work in his vineyard. When the day's work was over, the owner of the vineyard instructed his foreman, "Call the workers in and pay them their wages. Start with the last hired and go on to the first." Those hired at 5 o'clock came up, and they were each given $1. When those who were hired first saw that, they assumed they would get far more, but they got the same, each of them $1. Taking the $1, they groused angrily to the manager, "These last workers put in 1 easy hour, and you made them equal to us, who slaved all day under a scorching sun." He replied to the one speaking for the rest, "Friend, I have not been unfair. We agreed on the wage of $1 a day, didn't we? So take it and go. I've decided to give to the one who came last the same as you. Can't I do what I want with my own money? Are you going to get stingy because I am generous?" Here it is again, the great reversal. Many of the first ending up last, and the last first. The question at the end there just jumps off the page. Are you going to get stingy because I am generous? Church, this is a parable that throws fairness out the window. And I think it's a warning for us and also a great heart check for our motives when we consider getting in the game, participating at all. Don't agree to getting in the game with anything other than a willing heart and a grateful attitude. Do it because you love Jesus. Do it because it's an act of worship with your money, all right? Do it because you're blown away by all that he has given you. First and foremost, salvation, all right? But then from there, he just continues to lavish grace upon you by placing you in a great church. This is a great church, all right? And he puts you here. By giving you community around you, by placing you in a country where participating in the workforce at all puts you in a place to be able to hear messages like this and do something with it, all right? God has been so generous with you and so generous with me, and that should drive us to get our finances in order, all right? So that we can then be generous back to the lost and the hurting world through the church of Jesus Christ. And listen, along the way, we will see blessings happen and things happen in other people's lives that don't seem fair to our flesh, much like we just read here in Matthew 20. But if I can quote Rob Ketterling like I did last week, I would say this: God didn't give someone else a blessing by taking a blessing from you. He doesn't work that way, all right? So let's never get so caught up in what we are getting or aren't getting, what we are giving or what we aren't giving in comparison to others. That's not the conversation at all, okay? The conversation is getting involved with a grateful heart as an act of worship, all right? We see here in Matthew 20, through this whole message and through this whole series, that our role is to recognize what God has given us, to purpose to get our finances in order so that we can participate in what God is doing, so that we can be grateful to him and generous to others. That's all 3 weeks in 4 bullet points right there. Recognize what he's given us, purpose to get our finances in order so that we can participate in what God is doing, so that we can be grateful to him and generous to others. It is about kingdom impact. It's about a legacy that is far greater than any story we could write for ourselves. This life is about so much more than money. And society tries to yell at us and scream at us that it's all that matters, okay? But it's simply a tool. Money should serve us, and money should serve the kingdom. We should not be serving it, all right? It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. It's going to take a plan and a vision for your life that is much greater than thank God it's Friday. Oh no, it's Monday. Okay, no, listen, we gotta be more disciplined than that. And listen to me here. I want you to hear me. God sees you and he believes in you. That's why you're hearing this message this morning. He put you in this place at this time because he trusts that you will take your ability to respond and you will use it correctly. All right, so from here, I want you to consider asking for help if you feel like you need it. And I made a real simple way for you to do it, all right? If you want any help in this area, I want you to email money@eriefirst.org. I will personally get that email, and I will personally partner you up with someone who can help you get things in order. Do you understand? All right? It's very simple. If you hear this and you feel like, that's great, I don't need that, but I do need to get in the game, then I want to challenge you to pray about it, to go to eriefirst.org/give, to hit the drop-down menu, and to get involved, get in the game, okay? Because it's not about your money. It's about your heart posture. It's about what God wants to do through your heart, do through your gifts. And it's about showing him you trust him more than you trust everything the world is always screaming at you about what you should or shouldn't do with your money, all right? Would you please stand this morning? I want to close this whole thing out in prayer. I want to thank God for where he's brought us through this series and for the opportunity to hear this. And my final challenge to you would be this. Let's up that percentage of participation. All right, let's see what happens when we watch ourselves fight for 100% participation in Kingdom Builders and we blow that goal out of the water. Let me pray. Jesus, thank you so much that we live in a time, in a place, in a country where we can hear messages like this and actually go do something with them, Lord. It's humbling. It's humbling that you see us and that you trust us to do something with it, Lord. And so I pray over every person in this room right now that you would engage their ability to respond. Holy Spirit, that you would light that ability to respond on fire and that you would get them excited to participate in the game. Lord, that if they need help, that they would email that email, that they would ask for that help, that we would get them partnered up with somebody so that they can stack days and weeks and months and years and watch the impact you will do through them in your kingdom. And so we thank you for your faithfulness, your goodness, and your patience with all of us as we're on this journey, and we worship you this morning. Amen.